The third and final question is, at what levels will this play out? And I think that there are a vast array of different levels that will all interact very intricately. The first is the international level, as you can see from our comments this morning. The second is the presidential. There's no doubt that presidential politics will play a huge role in the direction this whole effort takes. The third is the congressional, as we're about to see as we watch Congress deal with this issue, both in the Senate and the House. The fourth is the state decisions that are already being made. We've got 22, at least, maybe 24 states with an RPS, and that is just indicative of the tremendous interest there is at the state level today. The fifth is business, and the business commitment that has to be made both internationally as well as domestically.
My name is Victor Abate. I head the renewable business for GE Energy. And we've been in the power generation business for over 100 years, and what I talked about today was really growing the wind business. And this is something we got in 2002 with the acquisition of Enron's wind business. But we saw this trend in the late 90s. It's clear that the world's looking for more environmentally friendly, reliable technology solutions. And there's not one answer. So we're investing across our portfolio of technologies, including coal, clean coal, gas, more efficient gas, as well as nuclear, and obviously wind and solar, which is the part that I head up. Some of the key points, if you look at the growth of this industry just from 95 to today, 44x in this country. Dramatic growth, 2.4 gigawatts last year, up from 45 megawatts in 1995. So dramatic growth. We're bullish on the industry's future because we see it as the technology that is clearly the most ready from a dispatchability, scalability, in a large-scale way. And globally, the world's added 50 gigawatts of renewables over the last 2 years. Wind has made up more than half of that, and so clearly we see it as a technology challenge. The three key points that we sort of closed on is for this industry to continue, technology is what's made the difference. 80% of the cost of wind power has dropped over the last 20 years due to technology advancements. We need to continue to invest there and also change the game towards wind farm technology, not just wind turbine. Supply chain, these are big investments. We've invested over $600 million in this space just since we've been here for 5 years. And that's what it takes for companies to play in the infrastructure space. So clearly supply chain and domestic aspects of that are promising because of logistics costs. And just to summarize, policy and siting is all about keeping the demand capable, keeping units able to land, as well as stable operations through the industry to maximize the efficiencies.
I'm sure you all know about this project. Since I started following this 6 years ago, not one wind turbine has been put in offshore waters in the United States of America. This opposition to this project has effectively stalled the whole industry in that direction. Why do you think this is, and what do each of you intend to do to change that situation?
Well, I think that there's a lot of questions that are eventually going to be resolved here. I think that because it's the first, there's always going to be a threshold, sort of precipice question, and once that threshold and precipice is addressed, the Delaware site and other sites that have been contemplated, I think, are going to come in play. But eventually, since we know it's very doable and practical and acceptable in Europe, I think we'll see that happen in this country too. But it takes a while, and I think we have to work through some of the obvious impediments. I believe that public policy is going to be much more embracing of offshore wind in the future. I think you do have economic issues that have to be addressed that go beyond the aesthetic questions, and those economic issues may be a larger impediment than the aesthetic questions. And I think we have to clear the path in public policy, and I certainly will be advocating that as publicly as I can, because I think it's a necessary component if we're going to build out the wind opportunities and expectations that there are for this country.
AWEA supports offshore wind. We think that if you look through the next few, 25 years, offshore will play a significant role, particularly the northeast coast. of the U.S. However, getting from here to there, we've got a few steps. It's not simply a question of the NIMBY pushback for Cape Wind. There are also economic challenges. Offshore is more expensive, and I think it is a different technology in some ways, requiring a different infrastructure. And I think it will require a public-private partnership to sort of hold hands together, look at the Northeast U.S. coast as an opportunity, and move forward on a broad scale with the infrastructure and the policy support necessary to achieve the potential that offshore wind represents in the U.S. I think Europe has been the leader, no question of that, for all kinds of obvious reasons in terms of not as much available land space and higher energy costs in Europe. Europe will be the leader and will develop this infrastructure, and we will be the happy beneficiaries of that here in the U.S. But offshore does have a future in the U.S. We support Jim Gordon and Cape Wind and are looking forward to that project becoming a reality in the not too distant future, hopefully.
Yeah, just to add quickly, I think Randy's outlined some of the main issues, and I suppose from a practical point of view, you have to ask the question, with so much available onshore resource, which is exploitable with known technology at a relatively low price, why would you want to move offshore until a significant portion of that has been exploited? Obviously, the technology does need to be developed, and it is being developed in Europe. There's considerable teething pains. It is a different technology. The stresses placed on the machines in a marine environment are of a different order of magnitude than you usually get onshore, and the infrastructure issues are significant. If you're interested, there's going to be a great conference in Berlin, a European Offshore Wind Conference in December, and if you could get over to there. I don't recommend the weather in Berlin in December, but I'm sure the conference is going to be very, very good.
Senator Daschle, could you talk some about the national transmission line that you spoke about earlier this morning?
Well, as I talk to people across the country, I think the biggest concern that we have in making the contribution that we think we can make to national energy policy, once one gets beyond just the investment questions, is transmission capacity. And the way to do it, it seems to those of us who have had a chance to look, is number one, expanding the federal power administration capacity is probably first and foremost the best way to look at it. But the Energy Policy Act of 2005 proposed that we take the grid and build a national interest electrical transmission framework. The third thing I think we have to do is to look at the tax-exempt bonding infrastructure that we've got available and provide resources for tax-exempt bond financing that would allow us an opportunity to build out using the bond program that has worked so well in other financing means as well. But whether that happens or not depends in part on whether we can work with the PUCs at the state level and whether we can create the kind of public-private partnership that will allow us to build on both the infrastructure as well as the capacity that we're going to have to take the wind from where it is to where it needs to go. And that's a long-term project that I think is going to be, it has to be foremost as we create public policy today. Transmission must be one of the most consequential of all the challenges we face legislatively.